Juju.
Hi.
It's a Jew festival. How are you?
It's a Jew fest. I'm great. How are you?
Welcome to the podcast, Ari Graynor.
I'm so happy to be on here and see you because we met a gajollion
Where did we
years
meet?
ago.
Refresh my memory, please.
It was, there's absolutely no way. It was probably 17 to 18 years ago at Jenny and Jason's house.
Oh my God. Two hot messes. Two of the hottest messes. Actually, that's not fair to Jason. Jenny's really the hot mess of the two, even though Jason is also a hot mess.
Them.
When do you guys not see each other anymore? Where are you? You're in New York, right?
I'm in New York. I'm in upstate New York now.
You just bought your first big girl house.
I got a big girl house like 6 months before the pandemic. I bought like a house built in 1803 with 62 acres and a barn built in 1796. And it's crazy. It's been like a whole thing.
That's amazing. Just in time to go back to that. Just to go back to that century.
That's right. Everyone needs to step back into 1803.
Well, congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Isn't it nice to be a female homeowner?
It truly, truly is. I mean, it was a wild thing doing it right before the pandemic. And I was dating somebody at the time, but he hadn't seen the place. And then we broke up and then it was pandemic. And me and my dog were just like, great. Now we'll just face our existential crisis out on the land and in this new house. And it was a pretty wild thing.
I think it's really powerful when you are a single woman and are able to buy property. It shouldn't really be.
Totally.
But as I was reading her notes, is this something that you were talking about? Because I thought it was a great point about how long ago it was. It wasn't that long ago where we had to get men's permission to even have our name on a deed or they had to co-sign.
To get a credit card.
To co-vouch for us to get, I mean, what?
Like the 70s. Like it was not that long ago.
What a nightmare that sounds like. I really hope we're not headed back in that direction, even though all fingers are pointing in that direction.
I know. It's a scary time for sure. But yeah, I mean, it's felt like the power of that. Like it was a huge internal sense of power of not only buying the place, but then being here alone and having the space where it's like, you know, we have all these like images of like the Marlboro Man or like men alone in the woods and doing their thing, but we don't really have that for women. And then when I was here and I was like, you know, out on the land and doing my thing and being in solitude and being like, this is my place. This is a powerful
I like out on the land.
Yeah. Do you have like chickens
the land,
or any of that
babe.
stuff? Like animals out on the property?
No, I mean, there's like the wild animals, you know,
Coyotes
there's like,
and-
there's the occasional bear sighting. There's like some random weasel kind of creatures and muskrats by the pond and deer and fox. And, you know,
Lovely.
it's like all of that, but I don't have chickens yet. Eventually.
Have you ever
but
seen any of those black king snakes up there in upstate New York?
Not a black king snake, I don't think, but there are snakes. We call the big one Mathilde. We say, bonjour, Mathilde. I don't know why she got named Mathilde, but they're these like enormous garden snakes, and one got in the house, but I wasn't home and my parents were here. My mom sent me this picture of like a snake like this big that had, I guess, crawled through like the stone walls and was in the living room, and she had to take it out. And I was very glad I wasn't home on that particular
Well, so I used to
day.
date this guy who had a house in upstate New York, and he had this, and there was this guy that lived in one of the properties around him, and he knew I have like a phobia of snakes, and they have all those black, thick king snakes up in upstate New York, and he told us he once opened up his cellar and turned on lights, and I mean, it was pitch black, and all you saw were all these little sets of white eyes, and that there were dozens and dozens of king snakes resting on top of each other.
No.
I was like, that is like a horror scene from my worst nightmare movie.
Yeah. Luckily, like, the snakes are not the issue for me. It's rodentia is the problem. And so, like, when I first moved here and there was the first couple of mouse sightings, I was like, I just have to move. I'll have to sell it. I'm outrun. I'm leaving the house. I can never go inside ever again. So
Burn it down. Yep.
What is rodentia exactly? Isn't that
Any kind of rodent.
Oh,
Mice, rats,
oh,
guinea pigs,
I thought that was okay.
capybara.
it's like if I see like a mouse, I completely lose my shit. And I've gotten better. Like the big thing, like I could be alone for like months at a time and figure out how to make that be okay. But if there was like a mouse or a dead mouse in the house, I was like, this is something I can't deal with. This is like the true confrontation of my abilities. But snakes, like, I'm okay.
That's funny. I think people either have it about, it's usually snakes or spiders. And
Yeah.
then it's
Or
usually,
spiders
like
also
I can
funny.
deal, if I see a mouse, I'm not excited, but I'm not going to lose it. Like if I saw a snake, even in the wilderness, I have an issue with them being there.
I'm okay with snakes,
Yeah.
not spiders. So that holds up.
Spiders okay too. It's like, it's something about the way the mouse moves. And I think I also had like a traumatic experience with a hamster in my youth, and I never quite got over it.
Did it involve Richard Gere's
And-
butt?
you know?
classique.
It
That's
did.
why he had to
No,
move
it
to Spain. He's on the right track. He got the fuck out of here. I was like, wait.
did. That's right.
That story, it's so funny when you hear rumors like that for so many years and so many years that, that rumor that
Yeah,
Richard Gere stuck a gerbil up his ass. But it's like, how can you be a person that goes around and those rumors are like, there's no recourse. You just have to
Right,
sit
and
there and
it's
take
just
it.
silly.
You just have to sit there because it's so ludicrous. It could be completely made up or it could be completely true. We'll never know. And maybe he doesn't remember.
Maybe he was in the blackout.
Ari, first of all, I'm so impressed with your acting. I think you're such a gifted and talented actress, as do many others,
thanks.
obviously. And I saw you it was at Mrs. America, right? You were
Yeah.
amazing in that. And then most recently, you were
you.
in Monsters, the Menendez brothers story, playing Leslie Stahl, their attorney, which...
Leslie Abramson. But Leslie Stahl is great too. I'd love
is
to
she
play
an
her as
attorney
well.
too? Oh, no,
I think she was on 60 Minutes.
Perfect.
Leslie Stahl,
Who
Leslie
gives a
Abramson,
shit?
the blonde.
Blonde, tight curls.
Yeah, it's the same. It's all the same.
I am so eager to hear about your thoughts about the Menendez brothers and like what you think. I mean, are they
It's
getting
evolving right now.
Well, now because Kim Kardashian is trying to get them out of jail, and I think she's succeeding.
Well, she was. I mean, now, look, I mean, I was like embroiled for a year in playing their defense attorney. So obviously I was coming at it from, a very specific point of view. I strongly believe it's time for them to be out of jail. And Kim and, all the Gen Zers who found the Menendez trial on YouTube when it came in 2021 and then sort of started this movement like on TikTok with them. And then the DA who didn't get reelected was like, get them out of there. And now I just hope they don't get stuck in, another round of political maneuvering because it's time. And it feels like the sentiment is like, it's time to look at this. And then this new DA keeps pushing their trial date. And, I'm not sure. I think it just got moved again until March. It was supposed to be January 30th. But they've been in for 35 years. They both got college degrees. They have been helping hospice with older inmates. They started a green space program. They've never had another incident. And, I think just if that trial happened now, I think it would be looked at in a different
So
way than it was
you're
back
like
then.
on their side, right? Is that what? Yeah,
I am.
You believe
Yes, yeah.
because there's a lot of back and forth about whether or not they were abused to the degree that they claimed they were, and whether or not this punishment is justified or if it's a sentencing, and because I came away from watching that, I mean, I think I watched the real documentary, and then I watched your series, and I came away just more confused than ever. I wasn't convinced that they were as abused as they said they were, and then I was like, God, if these were two girls, I wouldn't hesitate to believe them, you know. And I had to think about why I didn't believe them, because I was like, well, and then I've never been, you know, I've never had that kind of manipulation in my life where somebody was manipulating. Like if somebody did treat you that way and you did turn into a grown man who could defend yourself, that you wouldn't, because you're so brainwashed and there's such a power dynamic there. So talk to me a little bit about what you learned about that, because I'm so curious as from an insider's perspective.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of at the crux of the first trial, which was that basically all the original trial was a hung jury, and it came down basically along gender lines because the men didn't believe that boys could be sexually abused, and culturally people didn't believe that, which is absurd, you know. And I think the psychological impact, which is, you know, what Leslie, over the course of that trial and the 6 years that she was working with them, was trying to get people to understand the psychology of abuse and of trauma, and you know, people being like, well, why didn't they just leave? And it's like, when you've been not only like horrifically sexually abused, but also like essentially brainwashed, you know, like the culture of control within that house or in an abusive relationship, you don't realize you can, or how, or when people are constantly threatening your life, you know. And even now we still don't really have like a correct recourse for victims of abuse who have tried to get away, who have tried to divorce, who have tried to have restraining orders. I'm not in any way condoning, you know, killing people by any means.
Right.
But that's not what I'm here to do.
New title to the
okay?
episode.
But-
Ari Graynor
Says murder your
espouses
folks.
God, don't let that be the headline.
espouses retaliation in the form of murder.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not something I'm signing up for, but it is a part of the justice system that I think is for women, for children, of when you are in a position and your life is on the line. Does that mean that you should then be imprisoned for the rest of your life because it was the only way that you could survive? To me, I would say not. But, you know, that's just me.
So what about the fact that, was it Lyle that was who was talking to his girlfriend after the fact and admitted to lying about the sexual abuse? What about that component of information?
Well, here's what I feel about that, which is like, also, I don't know. I mean, they did so much research on the show, so stuff that was in there was correct. I never read the book that she wrote. I was sort of like, I'm staying on my defense track. But psychologically, there's something that I can understand about that, of like, when you have revealed your deepest, most unspeakable secret. I mean, first of all, there is nothing more unspeakable than sexual abuse, especially when you've come from a family where you are told your entire life what you must never do is speak of something. And then to share that, to reveal that, I think there's like an automatic reaction to then want to protect and defend and close up. I mean, I even feel that way, and I'm like therapized up the wazoo, but when I have like a very vulnerable moment, there still is the reaction afterwards to want to try to like take it back or make a joke or do it. You know, there's a kind of a natural response to that. And so in a way, I understand where here's this young man who's just revealed the most painful things, and the bravado of being like, I didn't, you know, it wasn't real. I don't remember what was said or what was actually said, but I understand the emotional response to want to, you know, close up, take it back, defend after revealing something so unbelievably painful.
Yeah, because
hard.
right after the murders, I think that the biggest thing that was, they went on these shopping sprees, they spent all this money, they were acting just so.
They were dumb kids.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
they were also dumb kids. But I also feel like, I did so much research about Leslie, and I just think she's incredible. And I guess for me, it's like to believe that also they were not abused means essentially that you think she made that story up. And from all of my research about her, like, people had opinions about her. She was a real firecracker, and not everybody liked her, but nobody ever called into question her integrity ever with any of her clients throughout her career about having to make up stories of their life.
Right.
Like, she's not a snake. She's so brilliant. It's like she's too smart to have to make up something like that on their behalf, in my personal belief and defense of her.
And did you have a lot of interaction with her, with Leslie?
No, sadly, I've not talked to her.
What are some other surprising things that you learned about her in doing the research?
Well, one thing that I think is really fun is that Joan Didion and John Gregory Dunn, who's Dominic Dunn's brother, were like her best friends. And so I feel like when you find out that Joan Didion is her best friend, you're like, well, she's definitely no snooze,
Right.
that tells you about a person, and she went to law school in the late 60s as a single mother and drove a yellow Corvette, and she came from Queens, and her grandmother was a labor organizer, organizing and fighting against the man, and they were like a family that fought, and and then there was her father basically her parents were divorced, but then her father completely disappeared from her life. They thought that he had moved to Florida to have another family, and it turned out that he was living a couple blocks away, and she didn't speak to him for 34 years.
Oh.
And then during the first trial, she reconnected with her father, adopted a baby, and her mother died, all during the first trial, which is crazy to think about.
Wow.
Crazy.
It's amazing to think about people's lives, certain people's lives, the backstory, going to law school in the 60s as a woman, just that alone.
Right.
I wonder what that was like. And a yellow Corvette. I wonder what kind of car Leslie Stahl was driving at that time.
I know. Let's get Leslie Stahl on the phone and find out about her early cars.
I feel like, and when you go in, when you're playing such a character, because I don't know, I'm not really an actor. So when you're playing a character, you don't want to impersonate them, right? You don't want to make a caricature. You want to do your version of them. Is that correct?
Yes. I mean, I definitely didn't. Yeah. You don't want to do an impersonation. But also, the juiciness of the opportunity of playing a real person, being I want to try to honor and get down this person's essence, and also, the rhythm of how she spoke and where her voice was and how she moves and all of that stuff. But yeah, I mean, that was the terror of working on it myself and then showing up. And, because I don't work with a coach or anything. I do this sort of unconscious dream work that is its own thing. But I'd never heard myself do it out loud, basically, until I showed up on set. I mean, I did it in the audition, but auditions, you're just kind of starting that process where you've watched a couple videos, and I had listened to her audiobook, but yeah, I was so scared because I was I don't know, am I doing this right? I mean, I sort of felt that way throughout the whole shoot. We were still shooting episode 8, and I remember saying to Ian Brennan, who is one of the co-creators of the show, and he was also directing, and I just remember sort of standing there and being do you think I'm good? And he was what do you mean? The scene was good. And I was yeah, but I mean, do you think I'm good as Leslie? And he was like, what are you talking about? Like, you are Leslie. What do you mean? And I was like, okay, that's fine. It's fine.
How did you not, you didn't practice the voice or the accent? I mean, your own?
Like, I did kind of, but it's sort of like I would hear it. I mean, and I was watching everything with her. She wrote a book and she also did the audiobook. So I would listen to that all the time. I would fall asleep to her voice. I would fall asleep to the book. And, like there were days on set when I did it, but especially in the very beginning, like I had one day of shooting and then I had, I think, 3 weeks off or a month. And, those are the dark days of the soul when it's the interstitial time where you're like, what have I done? Am I going to be fired? Am I doing this right? And I think because you do, like, everybody kind of has their own way of doing it. Like, some people are watching everything and trying to get it, perfectly. Like, there's some videos, from the trial that I wanted it to be as close to the thing as possible. But then sometimes people play real people, but they just are like, I'm completely doing my own version of it. And they're both right, but it's just like a matter of if it works within the context of the thing. But
okay, go back to what you were saying. You do some dream sequence. What did you just mention earlier before that?
Yeah, so there's this creative dream work I do, and it sort of is about tapping into your unconscious as a way of tapping into your creative source, like this idea that sort of every character comes to you for a reason and at this time, and it's like, what are you able to explore sort of through this character, this work? So sometimes you use an actual dream and you sort of walk through the dream in your mind. It's very hard to describe, but it's really powerful. And I sort of used the episode 5 where me and Cooper Kachi plays Eric Menendez, where it's a one shot, one scene conversation with us in prison, and sort of used that and walked through that. And a lot of really interesting things came up for me in that about anger, about like confronting and owning my own anger, because Leslie was somebody who was like very in touch with her anger and would define herself as a fighter, like a fighting type. And I'm less of a fighting type. Like, I have a lot of anger, but it's not I think for women it's hard to own anger. It's hard to know it's like or for me, just speaking for myself, where it's there, but I think like tapping into that and owning that and holding that, and that was such a big part of, I think, where she was coming from in episode 5, of like the anger of what they had gone through and what those parents, like that was not what parenting was. And so there was, it's a deep way of getting in touch with something without it being like, what's my objective in the scene? It's like a deeper.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
I'm doing a great job. I think I'm doing a very good job describing this.
Well, I mean, I've never heard about this before, so it's my introduction, so that's okay. I don't have to fully understand. I just wanted to get a sense of what you were talking about. As soon as you said dream work, I'm like, we're going to need to go back to that for a second.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going to take a break, and we'll be right back with Ari Graynor. And we're back with Ari Graynor.
Back. Are you ready to give some advice, Ari?
Are you ready to give Are you ready to give some legal advice? Because that's what we're gonna do.
Legal advice, emotional advice, dating advice. I cannot wait.
Medical, we do a lot of that here.
I mean, medical too. Yeah, no, I got it.
Well, it's so funny how sometimes things will come up earlier in the episode that we then have questions about. So our first question is a write-in. It comes from Wendy. Wendy says, "Dear Chelsea, I am a woman in the United States. I feel extremely unsafe with the current administration. I'm a feminist, an activist, and have become much more active since the Dobbs decision. I even host a podcast about deconstructing patriarchy and living life on your own terms. However, I feel compelled to move out of this soon-to-be shithole. My friend says, like James Baldwin, I will regret leaving to better myself while leaving everyone else behind. I disagree. At what point did people start leaving Germany? I can still do all feminist and activist interests while living overseas. I can fly back and do keynotes, host my podcast, and write my Substack and talk on social media. Do you think I'll regret moving out? Wendy.
I would say go for it.
Yeah.
Personally, if you are
Do it.
not comfortable with what's happening, go. And if you have the means to go, absolutely. I
Yeah.
think everyone has that, everyone is kind of, a lot of people, not everyone, are having these thoughts. And it's,
Yeah.
I think you have to do what's right for your sanity.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I don't know. I mean, it's so hard to know of like all the specifics of what you're leaving, who you're leaving, but it's also people you still hold those people in your life, and there's other, there's other life to be had, there's other experiences to be had, there's other places to live, and I think like listening to that voice is important. I mean, these are questions I ask myself too. I don't know. Do you ask yourself those questions, Chelsea?
Oh,
About, like,
absolutely. I'm thinking about it all the time. I'm always thinking about it. I just watched Lee last night, that Kate Winslet movie that it takes place during World War II, and and the fall and like the rise of Hitler. Her whole life was happening during the rise of Hitler, and she talks in the movie like it was the character. It happened so slowly, yet it happened so quickly. Like they watched it, but it didn't seem real. It seemed like a dream. It seemed surreal. And then it was real, and then you had to exist within that. And it's like, how do you exist when Hitler's trying to take over Europe, and he's the most powerful man in Europe? And she talks about living a life under that, like within that, living a life, and then choosing. And then she became a war photographer because she had to do her part. She felt so compelled to do her part. And whatever your part is, you can still do that without being in this country. I believe that. I don't think you have to be here to fight. And I totally understand wanting to get out of here. And I would say if that's your inclination, go for it. You can, of course, you're not going to, the people in your life are in your life. They're not going anywhere. Yeah. But you might be. And, if that's your decision, absolutely. I totally get it.
Yeah.
I think you should go, Wendy.
Yeah, I agree. It's like I find myself wanting to sort of like bury my head in the sand a little bit. And like, this is not what Wendy's doing. She's like, I'm going to keep up the good fight. But if you need to remove yourself from the physical location in order to like keep your stamina to keep doing that, like it's probably the right choice.
Well, and fighting can look like a lot of different ways, or resistance can look like a lot of different ways. Like it doesn't just have to be, what we think of like fighting in a traditional sense. Like that can also be stepping outside of the norm or what you think you're supposed to do and showing a resistance about what feels right to you. Yeah. Go, Wendy. Go. Yeah. Maybe I'll be following you.
Yeah. And Wendy, send us the name of your podcast. We'll put it in the show notes so people can check it out. All right. Brad, do we have Bree on the line? Or not yet?
Hi, Bree.
Okay, great. Our first caller is Bree. She's 35. Bree says, Dear Chelsea, I'm 35 and I've been in a series of monogamous relationships since I was 18.
Copy that.
I left a 10-year relationship with a great man who I still adore as a friend, then fucked around and found myself in a relationship with a raging alcoholic, then somehow ended up in a relationship with a man-child. Put myself through the ringer and have been in therapy for 2.5 years to find out a lot about myself as well as what I want in a partner. A year and a half ago, I told my therapist about all the qualities I wanted in a man, and boom, I met him that night and can now finally say I'm in a loving and healthy relationship with someone I truly see a future with. He's a little older than me and has been ready to move in together for a couple months, but here's the thing. I love living alone, and I'm having a very hard time thinking about leaving my apartment and living with someone else again. Help a sister out. How do I handle this? Bree. And is she still connecting, Brad? Okay. All right. Let's Yeah. Oh.
Are you dating anyone now, Ari?
Relate. Hi, Bree.
Hi, Bree.
Yes.
Hello.
Hi.
We'll circle back to that. Bree, I feel you. This is our special guest today, Ari Graynor.
Hi.
I feel you. And is there any way you can keep your apartment while you move in with him?
I mean, I could, but it's so expensive where I live. And like, that would be the dream, is to keep my apartment for sure. But I don't know how I would work that financially, is the only thing.
Are you guys in the same city?
So we're like 45 minutes apart, which I love because it's like space and we both live by the ocean. So it's perfect. But it's just like, yeah. So we're 45 minutes apart, but the commute doesn't really bug us or anything.
I'm going to just say that I would stay where you are. It's a big surprise here, I know, but I would just say any distance you can have with someone you love. You met this great guy. It sounds perfect for you, and it sounds like you manifested it like very quickly. And if you're really into and you dig your alone time, I really would be hesitant to give that up.
I had to say my partner now that I've been with for 4.5 years, I live in upstate New York and he lives in Seattle half the time because he has a 16-year-old. And I don't know, after like a lot of relationships of like serial monogamy, living with people, blah, 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 sometimes I think it's harder to be with somebody all of the time than it is to be away from each other sometimes. And I don't know. I think it can look a lot of different ways where you can have like a beautiful, full, intimate, committed relationship and not have to live together all of the time.
Yeah, totally. I fully agree with you.
Yeah, 45 minutes away is nothing. Like, that is nothing. I mean, I've been in so many long distance relationships and they work great because there's not an overdose of the person in my life. I want to miss someone. That's what makes me keep coming back. So, and you seem like that same type if you're saying that.
Yeah. 100%.
But you're saying it's too hard, but the financials of holding on to this relationship, this apartment now, like that's too hard.
No, we can keep our living situation as is. And that's the thing. I never want to live with someone just because it's financially smart. Like, I've done that and it's not the right way to approach things. But yeah, I can keep my spot now for as long as I want and he can keep his spot. It's more just he wants to live together and I'm like, I'm not ready.
Do you have the kind of work life where you can go stay with him for, like a week on, a week off kind of thing?
Yeah, totally. I work from home, so it's easy. And my therapist, she had mentioned doing like a trial run, but even that, I'm like, I know I'm going to want to go home.
Yeah. Well, I'm going
to want my space.
Have you talked to him about it? Like about your hesitancy?
Yeah, he knows everything. He actually knows I was asking you guys for advice too. And he was like, good, get her advice. And I was like, she's gonna not agree with what you want. But
I just think you have to, as women, we really have to listen to ourselves. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we get swept away in an emotion and a feeling and we make a decision based on what someone else wants for our relationship. And of course he wants to live with you. Of course he wants to see you every morning when you wake up. But if that's not the type of person you are, and I think this is more and more true for women everywhere, you're going to end up resenting that. You're going to end up feeling crowded and you may sabotage the relationship. Not definitely, but possibly. So why even risk it if you have a good thing going? 45 minutes is nothing.
And it's so chic to live apart.
And it's like both places can feel like a version of home, and like having alone time is so important. Like I feel like that has been like the key pillar of my life and healthy relationships has been like how much time I need alone and reckoning with that, because you're not for so long it felt like there was something wrong with me for requiring the amount of alone time I needed. And it like has nothing to do with the relationship or bearing on anything except that like it's important. Autonomy alone time is good and your relationship can flourish within that. So
And then you can just spin it. Be like, this is how committed I am to you. I'm going to keep my apartment because I believe we're going to go like for the long haul. And I want us to be successful. And I think that's going to be part of our success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I love the idea that Ari had of like, even if it's a few days on and a few days off, or a week on and a week off, like do it part-time, but it doesn't have to be like, let's try it for 6 months
Right.
sort of thing.
Yeah. Especially 45 minutes away, you know? And it's like a week, like going there for a week, then have a couple days, then he can come there if he can. Like, I don't know. I've found that that's worked very well for me. And now this feels like our home together, but also, you know, what I can do, how I feel, or like what I can do for myself when I'm alone and in my, you know, my week off while he's back. It's like, I need that time.
Yeah, same. It's like a recharge for sure, and like a reset and recenter and the whole thing for sure. I completely agree. So I guess my question is though, is like, what if it becomes a deal breaker and then I have to choose between the two?
Do you think it will become a deal breaker?
I think so in the future. Yeah.
How long have you guys been together?
We're coming up on 2 years.
Well, also, I feel like, I don't know, things in 2 years, who knows how you'll feel or how he feels,
Right.
you know, like in this moment, especially if maybe it's, you commit to different chunks of time together. So it's thinking about doing like a week together and then 3 days apart, and that like maybe there's a way to structure some of that time so you both know how you are committed to spending big chunks of time together while also having that time apart. And then, you know, your feelings might change in a few years.
Or
you
commit
know?
to doing a month together and then teach yourselves both a lesson. Because I'm sure by the end of it, you both want fucking 3 days off. Like, you know what I mean?
For real.
Yeah.
You can be like, sure, let's try. I'll come live with you for 1 month straight. And then let's discuss it. Let's regroup and see how we both liked that.
Yeah.
You know, like experimentally.
Yeah.
But I would definitely trust your gut.
Okay.
And if he does make it a deal breaker, call in and do a mini-sode for couples counseling.
Yeah, and we'll do couples counseling.
Love that idea. Okay.
Oh, fun.
Perfect.
Yay.
All right, thanks, Bree.
Thank you
Okay,
guys
bye,
so
Bree.
much. Bye. Thank you.
By the way, do you watch couples therapy?
I love it. Love it. I love
that
watching
show.
therapy. It's the best.
Me too. Orna is such a good therapist.
Yeah,
too.
she
I was
really
just
is
watching it
good.
the other night. Ugh.
She is.
Love.
Whenever they talk, whenever we see her personal life, I'm like, no, I don't want to see anything about her personal life. Like, she's such a good therapist. I just want to keep her in that little bubble. You know what I mean?
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to know that you have a son. I'm not interested.
She has a son.
I think so. I think she has a
Spoilers.
son. Yeah.
Don't tell me. Yeah. Mhm.
Well, our next question comes from Catherine. I think she needs a little bit of like a confidence boost here. So she says, Dear Chelsea, I never expected a comedian to help me through some of my toughest times, but I found your podcast and here we are. I went through a bit of a hard time a few years ago and just this year started dating again. It's been a roller coaster for sure. I've had some people I've been interested in, dated, slept with, but nothing's panned out. My workplace shares a building with another company. I've had negative experiences in the past dating coworkers and have a strict no coworkers policy for myself. When I first started the job, I noticed a good-looking guy at the other company, but never had reason to interact. He introduced himself to me when there was a random fire in the building, and then a couple months later, a weird accident led to him talking to me again. We've chatted a few times since. Recently, he's intentionally brought himself into my orbit, and I'm pretty sure he's also interested. My issue is that even though we don't work together, we share an open workspace. Second issue, a different colleague of mine has proven to be a bit of a gross person when it comes to at-work relations. Because my work crush and this colleague associate, I can't help but worry that my crush shares the same kind of locker room talk as this colleague. I pride myself on my reputation at work, so everything in me is screaming not to pursue it, but I don't want to write off my first real crush in 4 years. Should I give him a chance despite my colleague's bro talk?
Yes, yes,
yes.
And this is
Yes.
also Catherine. So
Catherine,
Hi,
what are
Catherine.
you doing? What is all of this nonsense? This is all noise. Go
Do
after
it.
it. Get after it. This is
My
your
brain
life.
is the noisiest thing.
I know. We'll turn
Yeah.
the fucking volume down and get down to the basics. You are attracted to someone who is attracted to you just because he is so. I have a news flash for you. Like, you guys you're going to date are going to have asshole friends, period. Like, that's
I
the
don't
way
even
it
know if they're
goes.
friends. I've been talking to
Exactly. You don't even know if they're
You
friends.
don't even know.
All of this is like supposition. You're not even sure what's happening, and you're making like 80 different blocks for you to get to this person that may or may not even be true.
You can also tell him, I mean, you can also this is what I love about dating when you're older is you can also say the things early on, where I feel like when you're young, you're so afraid of saying a wrong thing that is going to make somebody run. And then I feel like when you get older, you're like, let me just say all the things and then you can decide what you want to do and I'll decide what I want to do. And you can also be like, I'm worried about this, or here's a concern of mine, and just talking it through, and who knows what he'll say about it.
And moreover, what makes you think that they are our friends?
I kind of am not wired for workplace flirtations anymore. So
No shit.
I've definitely bumbled through those a little bit. And anytime I was like, okay, I can work it in there. He's just so deadpan, about what's going on in our company. And then I'm just like, okay, well, now's not the time for this kind of thing. And then just the way that he speaks about my colleagues is kind of what's hinting that there's really maybe not the best interaction there. It's kind of just we work in the same environment, I'm going to keep the peace kind of thing. But I also have to be very careful what I say about that, because again, I don't know him very well, so maybe he's going to say what I've been saying back to these people.
Oh my God. We have to give you, you have to put your head in a shampoo bowl and wash all of this garbage out. You are just running around in circles in your head.
Yeah.
You like this guy. He likes you. Forget everything else. You do not even work together. First of all, I'm not against that either. Workplace romance, it's where are adults supposed to meet? They work together. That's where half people
true,
meet.
yeah.
So that's silly. That's a silly rule. And all these rules you have are just kind of you have to work very hard at stripping away all of this noise. And that's going to be a practice for you, but you can do it.
Yeah. I think you should just go ask him out, because he's made it clear. You don't want to let it go too long, and then he's feeling like he's overstepped.
Send him an email and go, just listen, it seems to me that you're being very flirtatious. If you want to ask me on a date, let me know and I can respond.
Very straightforward. Gotta work on that.
Yeah, or just be like, do you want to get a drink after work or something?
I finished work at 11. He's done at 5:30, p.m. 5 p.m.
Right.
That's
Okay.
enough.
Well, I mean, would you be comfortable writing an email like that? I mean, I know you wouldn't be, but would you do it?
I'm definitely better writing than I am.
Yes. I love that.
Initially, I'm better at interacting with people with words using email, and then I can because he hasn't really had a chance to see my personality yet, because I've been so I have this professional face I have to put on, so I haven't really been able to show my funny side or the actual me side, which is
and all the voices in your head. You haven't been able to show him that either.
I know. Well, they're just there, they never take a vacation.
Well, I
No.
think you should send him an email and just put it out there. Put it out there. You're going to get the response that you want. And then you can start dealing with all of these other issues that you're creating, or let them fall away as you start to get to know him. And then you can get to know if he's like that or if he's like your friend. I'm still confused as to why you think that. I don't think you really answered that question. Why do you think this guy that you have a crush on is friends with your work colleague?
Because they've all mentioned him before in some context. They're having these interactions that aren't work related. So I kind of just have to assume that maybe there's a friendly interaction outside of the workplace as well. Because I don't.
Well, a lot of assumptions. Of assumptions.
I think it's go see each other outside, see what the vibe. Because also you might not even. It's
like him.
You might not even like him.
Yeah.
Or he might be the love of your life. You don't know, but you got to get out of that office to know.
Yeah.
Listen, you have one life to live. One, okay? So make it fucking count and work in your best interest. No one is going to find love for you. You have to find it for you.
Well, they're trying. They're failing, but they're trying.
Who's they?
My friends. They're really invested in my love life.
That's great. I'm glad they're invested, but you can't rely on other people to find. No. You have the person here, so just don't. You need to go and send that email, and I need you to report back to us also.
Of course,
yes,
100%.
Please.
Let us know what happens, okay?
Yeah.
I will, absolutely. Thank you very much.
Also, congrats on having a crush. A crush is so fun.
I know, crushes are the best.
They are at the beginning, not now.
Yeah, well, you can extend the crush. I mean, the flirtation can keep going and going and going until you go out. And even then, it's just so fun, flirting back and forth, especially over email. That's my favorite.
Yeah. I just wish it wasn't in a public space that people
well, you wish a lot of things. So.
I know, I do.
Yeah, okay. All right. Keep us posted.
I will. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Watch, they're going to get married and have lots of babies.
Of course they are. Of course they
are. I
are.
really want to find out what happens.
Yes. We will definitely check back in with her in a couple weeks and see what happened.
What was her name?
Catherine. She's a Catherine Elizabeth, just like me.
Oh.
And spelled all the right ways. Well, we have one more question, but we could take our little break and then come back.
Okay,
it's a juicy
great.
one.
Okay. We'll be right back with Ari Graynor. Back to we have one more question.
Yes.
We have one more caller question.
Yes.
This is so fun.
Isn't it? I love it.
It's a dream.
Especially when it's real. It's like sometimes we get some questions and I'm like, what the fuck are they asking me that for? Like, but some question, I love interpersonal affairs. I love like breaking up or finding a crush. That was one of my favorite topics. Like that woman calling in. I love that shit.
Oh yeah. What to do about a crush.
More crush questions.
Ugh, my favorite.
Well, this question comes from Sarah. Dear Chelsea, about a year ago, my husband and I went away for a few nights. My mother-in-law stayed at our house to watch our small children, sleeping in our bed to stay close to the baby.
Ew.
When I returned, I noticed that my journal, which I keep in my nightstand, had obviously been tampered with. The strap was in a different place than usual. My worksheets from therapy were not where I left them, etc. I was totally shaken. My husband handled it and addressed it with my mother-in-law. She denied reading it and said she didn't touch it. I had postpartum depression with my second child, as well as a recent rocky patch with my husband where I relied heavily on my journal to process. It makes me sick to my stomach to think of my mother-in-law reading my most intimate thoughts. I used to enjoy looking back on previous years and memories I've written about. Every year, I write a letter to my children on their birthday. I never knew if I was going to give these to them, but it was my most intimate thoughts about motherhood and reflecting on each year with them. These letters were for me alone and possibly one day my children. It makes me very upset thinking she read something that was supposed to be between me and my daughters. I've come to terms with her denial, and I don't believe I will ever fully know the truth. How do I continue to use journaling as part of my toolbox in staying regulated and well? I wrote in this journal every day for 4 years, and since that event, I haven't been able to pick it up again. I really loved this part of my day, and it helped my mental health in a big way. It doesn't feel like a safe place anymore. Looking back on past years now makes me angry thinking of her reading those thoughts. I tried to buy a brand new journal and start fresh, but I still have a mental block and can't move forward. Is there any way I can get past this and start using this coping skill that helped me through some dark times? Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, you have to start journaling again. This is not your issue. This is your mother-in-law's issue. She opened your book. You cannot control her. She opened your journal. She invaded your privacy. So it is up to you to take your power back. I can guarantee you she's not going to do it again after she's been called out. But you have to get a new journal and just start practicing. This is something that is giving you such relief and such comfort that you can go to this place and write in your journal each night and write this beautiful letter to your daughters each year on their birthdays. That is such a beautiful thing to even hear. Like, you've got to keep going and do not let someone else's misstep create your own misstep. You keep going and do whatever you need to do. And if it doesn't feel right the first couple times, keep doing it. Just keep writing into your journal until you get back to your safe space. What do you think, Ari?
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing more like that kind of writing has also been transformative for me, and you can't give that away to her. It's you can't give that power to her or to that. That is something to reclaim for yourself. Absolutely. It's a beautiful, beautiful practice. I totally get what a horrible invasion that is and how hard that is. But I feel like it's like when the old fall off a horse, like when somebody falls off a horse and they're like, I just have to get back up there so that I'm not afraid to ever do it again. It's like, even if the writing in the beginning is like, I hate this, this feels wrong, I don't want to do this, like just writing the honesty through it to get to the other side, because that's for you. You got to keep that.
Yeah, girl, don't let your mother-in-law take you down.
And I wonder, too, if there's like a way to upend it and like create a different ritual around it. Like doing it at a different time of day than you used to. Doing it in a different place. Like maybe you used to write in bed, go to a cozy chair, like really changing your ritual around it. Maybe it's like saging your journal. Like do something that creates a different energy around it. And then, yes, like start with where you're at. Like, I'm angry that this happened. I'm upset that this happened.
But you have to realize you're holding on to these emotions that are not your fault. These are her issues, not your issues. She was being nosy. She had no boundaries. That doesn't change who you are. You're choosing to allow her to disrupt this connection you had with yourself. And that's on you. You have to choose to move forward, and you have to choose to be like, I'm bigger than this and I'm going to get past this. And yes, I understand you're upset, but don't let her take your power away.
I also wonder if there's a way of like writing a letter to her that you have no intention of ever giving, but just of a reprocessing of saying all the things out loud about, out loud via writing about how that made you feel, like that, just to get that out, just to keep working through that too, to sort of anything that's left over in the mind of like, you made me never want to do this again. My trust is gone, whatever that is that you'll never ever give to her, but just as a way of also getting that part of your feeling out of your brain.
And then put that letter in your journal and she'll read it.
That's right. Thank you, Ari Graynor. Thank you so much for being here today. What a delight.
Thank you so much for having me. This was like such a joy. I love you. And I'm like just so happy I got to be here.
Yeah, I hope I see you soon.
Me too.
Okay,
Me too.
take
Back
care.
at Jenny and Jason's. Okay, bye, you guys.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.